The Bruce McArthur murders. A true story of a serial killer in Toronto. Bruce McArthur was a seemingly ordinary landscaper in Toronto, known by his clients as friendly, hardworking, and reliable. But beneath this outward persona lurked a dark secret. McArthur was one of Canada's most notorious serial killers, preying on vulnerable men within Toronto's LGBTQ+ community. His capture in 2018 not only shocked the city, but also revealed the chilling details of his gruesome crimes, many of which occurred in quiet, unsuspecting neighborhoods. McArthur's case remains one of the most disturbing in Canadian history, a stark reminder that evil can hide in plain sight. Bruce McArthur, the seemingly harmless landscaper. Bruce McArthur was born on October 8, 1951, in Lindsay, Ontario. Raised in a conservative household, McArthur was described by those who knew him as soft-spoken and polite. He eventually moved to Toronto, where he built a career as a landscaper. For many years, McArthur maintained a relatively low profile, though he was known to have had financial struggles, which led him to take various odd jobs before he established his own landscaping business. As he entered his 50s and 60s, McArthur became a regular in Toronto's Gay Village, a neighborhood centered around Church and Wellesley streets, known for its vibrant LGBTQ+ community. Although McArthur was not openly gay in his earlier years, he became more active within the community later in life. He cultivated friendships with several people in the area, and no one suspected that the quiet, friendly man who worked as a landscaper would later be revealed as one of Toronto's most prolific serial killers. Disappearance of men in Toronto's Gay Village. Between 2010 and 2017, several men, mostly of Middle Eastern or South Asian descent, went missing from Toronto's Gay Village. Many of these men were gay or bisexual and had families that either did not know or did not accept their sexual orientation. This vulnerability made them easier targets for a predator like McArthur, who preyed on men in the margins of society, those whose disappearances might not immediately raise alarm within their families or communities. Some of the missing men were known to frequent the same bars and areas as McArthur, but for years the police did not connect the dots. The disappearances were initially treated as isolated incidents, despite concerns within the LGBTQ+ community that something more sinister was happening. Activists and community members expressed frustration with the police, accusing them of not taking the cases seriously because the victims were gay men of color. It wasn't until the number of missing persons cases increased that the Toronto police launched a more in-depth investigation into what was going on in the Gay Village. The murders and McArthur's modus operandi. Bruce McArthur lured his victims by gaining their trust. He often met men through dating apps like Grindr or at local bars in the Gay Village. McArthur's approach was subtle. He presented himself as someone looking for consensual encounters, and many of his victims willingly went with him to his apartment or other secluded locations. What his victims didn't know was that McArthur had a sadistic side, a desire to control, dominate, and ultimately kill. Once he had his victims alone, McArthur would restrain them, often using ropes or other tools associated with bondage. He then strangled them, sometimes using a metal bar or a ligature, and would pose their bodies in disturbing, sexually suggestive positions. McArthur kept mementos from his killings, including photographs of his victims, both alive and dead, as well as items of clothing or personal belongings. As a landscaper, McArthur had access to numerous properties throughout Toronto. After murdering his victims, McArthur would dismember their bodies and hide the remains in planters or flower beds on his clients' properties. He used his professional work as a convenient cover for his horrific crimes, ensuring that the bodies were hidden in plain sight, buried in the soil of gardens and properties across the city. The police investigation, Project Houston and Project Prism. The investigation into the disappearances of men from Toronto's Gay Village began in earnest in 2012 with Project Houston, a task force set up to look into the disappearance of 3 men: Skandaraj, Skandar Navaratnam, Abdul Basir Faizi, and Majid Hamid Kaihan. Despite extensive efforts, Project Houston failed to identify a suspect or link the missing men to any criminal activity. The case grew cold, leaving the families of the victims and the community with no answers. It wasn't until 2017, with the launch of Project Prism, that the investigation gained traction. Project Prism was created after the disappearance of Selim Essen and Andrew Kinsman, 2 men who went missing within months of each other in 2017. Kinsman's case, in particular, drew significant attention because he was well known in the community and had friends and acquaintances who immediately reported his disappearance. Unlike some of McArthur's other victims, Andrew Kinsman left behind clues that led investigators closer to the truth. His calendar had the name Bruce written on the date he was last seen, leading police to focus on Bruce McArthur as a potential suspect. With this information, authorities began surveillance on McArthur and eventually obtained a search warrant for his apartment. The arrest and capture. On January 18, 2018, Toronto police arrested Bruce McArthur at his apartment. At the time of his arrest, McArthur was found with a man tied to his bed, another potential victim who narrowly escaped becoming McArthur's next casualty. Investigators quickly moved to search McArthur's property and the homes of his landscaping clients. During their investigation, police uncovered disturbing evidence of McArthur's crimes. They found photographs of his victims on his computer, as well as personal belongings and trophies from the men he had murdered. But the most shocking discovery came when police began searching the properties where McArthur had worked as a landscaper. In large planters and flower beds, they discovered the dismembered remains of several men, carefully concealed in the soil. In total, police identified the remains of 8 men. McArthur was charged with 8 counts of first-degree murder, making him one of the most prolific serial killers in Canadian history. The trial and sentencing. Bruce McArthur's trial was one of the most highly publicized in recent Canadian history. Faced with overwhelming evidence, McArthur pleaded guilty to the murders in January 2019. During the trial, it was revealed just how meticulous and calculated his killings had been. The court also heard from the families of the victims, who spoke of the immense pain and loss they had endured. On February 8, 2019, McArthur was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole for 25 years. Given McArthur's age, he was 67 at the time of sentencing, it is unlikely he will ever be released. The sentencing provided some closure to the families of the victims, but the scars left by McArthur's horrific crimes continue to linger within Toronto's LGBTQ+ community. Impact on the community and lessons learned. The Bruce McArthur case highlighted serious issues in how the Toronto police handled missing persons cases, particularly those involving marginalized communities. Many in Toronto's LGBTQ+ community felt that their concerns had been dismissed by the police, and that the disappearances of gay men, especially men of color, were not taken seriously enough. In the wake of McArthur's capture, the police faced heavy criticism for their handling of the case. An independent review was launched to examine how the investigations were conducted and to identify what could be done to prevent similar cases in the future. The review led to changes in how police handle missing persons cases, with an emphasis on improving relations with marginalized communities and ensuring that all cases are given the attention they deserve. The Bruce McArthur murders left a deep scar on Toronto, particularly within the LGBTQ+ community. The case serves as a haunting reminder of the dangers that can exist even in the most familiar places, and the importance of vigilance when it comes to protecting vulnerable individuals. Conclusion: the Bruce McArthur case remains one of Canada's most chilling and disturbing true crime stories. A seemingly harmless landscaper, McArthur concealed his predatory nature behind a mask of normalcy, all while committing heinous acts of violence against men in Toronto's gay village. His ability to evade capture for so long, while hiding the bodies of his victims in planters across the city, shocked the nation and left an indelible mark on the community. McArthur's crimes may have come to an end with his arrest, but the memory of his victims and the lasting impact of his actions continue to resonate. 4.